Imagine if I revealed to you that Carl Jung uncovered a technique to penetrate anyone's facade using merely 2 inquiries. Suppose the individual before you conceals something so essential about their nature that they themselves remain unaware of it. Keep reading, because after this exploration, your perception of others will be permanently altered. You believe you comprehend people, correct? You assume you can decipher them, grasp their drives, anticipate their actions. However, Carl Jung made an observation that will completely demolish this misconception. But before we continue, please like this video, share it with people who might appreciate it, and write in the comments which city you're following our YouTube channel from. According to Jung, the pioneer of analytical psychology, everything that aggravates us about others can guide us towards self-understanding. Yet here's what most individuals overlook. Jung uncovered that our authentic nature isn't exposed through our triumphs, accomplishments, or even our defeats. It emerges through something far more nuanced, far more revealing. And I'm going to demonstrate precisely how to expose it. Carl Jung devoted more than 50 years examining the human mind, and his discoveries will unsettle you. He realized that every individual wears what he termed a persona, a facade we display to society. Beneath this facade exists something Jung labeled the shadow, the aspects of ourselves we decline to recognize. Here's where it becomes captivating and why you must attend to every phrase I'm about to share. Jung uncovered that during comfortable moments, when we maintain control, we can sustain our persona flawlessly. We can embody whoever we wish to seem. However, there exist 2 particular instances, 2 exact psychological catalysts where this facade inevitably falls. This is where Jung's 2 inquiries emerge. According to Carl Jung, these instances reveal more about someone's nature than years of watching. Why? Because they circumvent the conscious intellect and access directly what Jung termed the unconscious patterns that govern our conduct. Before I disclose these inquiries, you must comprehend something vital that Jung discovered about human essence. Carl Jung stated, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will control your existence and you will call it destiny." This is the foundation for understanding why these inquiries function so remarkably effectively. Jung discovered that our character contains multiple dimensions: the persona, our public facade; the ego, our conscious identity; the personal unconscious, our suppressed memories; the shadow, our denied characteristics; the collective unconscious, universal human archetypes. Now, here's what's remarkable and why you absolutely cannot stop watching now. According to Carl Jung, when specific psychological catalysts activate, we bypass the persona and ego entirely. We respond from what Jung termed our genuine self, the raw, unprocessed version of who we truly are. Jung identified 2 particular catalysts that function consistently. The first catalyst concerns what Jung discovered about projection. He found that we unconsciously project our shadow characteristics onto others. When we condemn someone, we're often exposing our own concealed traits. The second catalyst involves what Jung termed ego inflation. When our self-concept is challenged or elevated beyond normal limits, our true nature surfaces from behind the facade. You're likely wondering, what are these actual inquiries? Wait, because how you present them matters more than the inquiries themselves. Inquiry 1. What type of individual do you absolutely despise? Listen carefully to how Jung would analyze this, because most people misunderstand completely. Carl Jung discovered that what we detest most in others actually reflects our own shadow, the aspects of ourselves we've rejected and refused to acknowledge. He termed this psychological projection, and it's among the most dependable methods to perceive someone's authentic nature. When someone responds to this inquiry, they're not actually describing other people. They're providing a blueprint to their own psychological blind areas. Here's where it becomes truly fascinating and why you must pay attention to their specific language. According to Carl Jung, the more emotional someone becomes when describing what they hate in others, the more probable it is that they possess these exact characteristics themselves. Jung stated, "Everything that irritates us about others can guide us to self-understanding." Let me provide examples of Jung's discoveries. If they claim they hate deceptive people, Jung would suggest this individual likely struggles with their own connection to honesty. They may deceive themselves regularly or have deceptive episodes they haven't acknowledged. If they claim they hate egotistical people, Carl Jung discovered this typically indicates someone who has suppressed their own needs and wishes so thoroughly that they cannot tolerate witnessing others express what they deny within themselves. If they claim they hate vulnerable people, Jung found this almost invariably reveals someone terrified of their own fragility and has constructed their entire identity around appearing resilient. Here's the essential aspect Jung discovered and why this inquiry is so exposing. The shadow doesn't merely contain negative characteristics. It contains any trait we've learned to reject within ourselves. Sometimes people claim they hate attention seekers or excessively cheerful individuals. Jung discovered this reveals someone who has suppressed their own happiness or self-assurance. The second inquiry is even more exposing because it catches people when their defenses are completely lowered. Inquiry 2. Describe a time when you were absolutely convinced you were correct about something, but discovered you were mistaken. This is where Carl Jung's brilliance truly emerges because this inquiry reveals something most people never recognize about themselves. Jung discovered that how someone manages being incorrect reveals their authentic nature more than how they manage being correct. Why? Because being incorrect threatens what Jung termed the ego ideal, our self-image as capable and informed. According to Carl Jung, when our ego ideal is threatened, several unconscious protection mechanisms activate. Denial, they'll insist they weren't truly incorrect, just that situation's shifted. Rationalization, they'll construct elaborate justifications for why their incorrectness was actually logical. Projection, they'll blame others for misleading them. Minimization, they'll claim it wasn't significant anyway. Here's Jung's discovery that will astound you. The individuals with the strongest character, according to Jung, don't employ these protection mechanisms at all. Instead, they practice what Jung termed maintaining the tension of contradictions. They can admit being incorrect without their entire self-perception collapsing. Carl Jung stated, "The privilege of existence is becoming who you genuinely are. And the people who can honestly examine their errors are those actively becoming their authentic selves." Pay attention to these specific responses because Jung discovered they reveal crucial character traits. If they cannot recall an example, Jung would say this person lives in such denial that they've built an elaborate illusion about their own infallibility. This is what Jung termed psychological inflation, when the ego becomes so inflexible it cannot tolerate any imperfection. If they immediately blame external circumstances, Carl Jung discovered this indicates someone with an external control center. They believe life happens to them rather than through them. These individuals rarely accept genuine responsibility for anything. If they become defensive while responding, Jung found this reveals someone whose entire self-worth depends on being correct. Their identity is so fragile that admitting error feels like psychological annihilation. If they can find humor in their mistake, according to Carl Jung, this indicates psychological maturity and what he termed integration, the capacity to accept both positive and negative aspects of themselves. Here's the most crucial thing Jung discovered about this inquiry. Carl Jung stated, "Your vision becomes clear when you examine your heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." Jung discovered that these two inquiries function because they compel people to look inward even when they believe they're discussing external matters. The first inquiry makes them reveal their shadow projections, and the second inquiry reveals their relationship with their own fallibility. Jung found something even more profound. According to Carl Jung, people fall into predictable categories based on how they respond to these inquiries. Type 1, the inflated ego type. These people project all negative traits onto others and cannot admit errors. Jung discovered these individuals are actually the most insecure, constructing elaborate defenses against their own shadow material. Type 2, the self-deprecating type. These people claim to hate traits they actually possess and over-admit to errors. Jung found this is also a defense mechanism. By acknowledging flaws superficially, they avoid addressing them deeply. Type 3, the integrated type. These rare individuals can acknowledge both their projections and their errors without their self-image collapsing. Jung termed this psychological integration the hallmark of mental wellness. Here's where Jung's insight becomes practically invaluable. Carl Jung discovered that once you understand someone's pattern, you can predict their behavior with remarkable accuracy. Why? Because Jung found that people are far more consistent than they appear. They simply express their core patterns differently depending on circumstances. Jung spent decades studying what he termed the dark aspect of human nature, and he discovered specific warning signs that appear when you ask these inquiries. Warning sign 1. They project all negative traits onto specific groups. Jung discovered that healthy people recognize negative traits across all types of people. When someone consistently projects onto one group, political party, gender, race, profession, Jung found this indicates dangerous psychological splitting. Warning sign 2. They've never been incorrect about anything important. According to Carl Jung, this level of denial indicates what he termed psychological inflation, a dangerous detachment from reality that often precedes major life crises. Warning sign 3. Their energy completely shifts when discussing what they hate. Jung discovered that sudden energy shifts indicate you've encountered a major shadow complex. The more dramatic the shift, the more repressed material you've uncovered. Warning sign 4. They redirect the inquiries back to you aggressively. Carl Jung found that people who immediately deflect these inquiries are often concealing the most significant shadow material. Here's Jung's discovery that might be the most important insight of all. Carl Jung stated, "The encounter of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." Jung discovered that these inquiries don't just reveal character, they actually change people. Why? Because the act of honest self-reflection is what Jung termed the beginning of individuation, the process of becoming your authentic self. This is why you must be careful how you use this knowledge. According to Carl Jung, when you perceive someone's shadow material, you have a choice. You can use it to manipulate them, or you can use it to understand them more profoundly. Jung discovered that manipulation creates what he termed psychological poison. It corrupts both the manipulator and the manipulated. But when you use these insights for genuine understanding, Jung found something remarkable occurs. Relationships become more authentic, more honest, more real. Here's the aspect Jung discovered that will change how you see yourself. Jung realized that these inquiries work bidirectionally. When you ask them of others, you're also forced to confront your own responses. When you judge someone else's projections, you're revealing your own. When you analyze how they handle being incorrect, you're confronting your own relationship with fallibility. Carl Jung stated, "Everything that irritates us about others can guide us to self-understanding." This isn't merely a pleasant saying. It's the key to psychological development. Jung discovered something even more profound about human nature. According to Carl Jung, once you understand these psychological patterns, you can apply them in every life area. In relationships, you can see past the persona your partner presents and understand their deeper psychological patterns. Jung discovered this leads to more authentic intimacy. In business, you can identify people's core motivations and blind spots. Carl Jung found that most business conflicts arise from unacknowledged shadow projections. In parenting, you can help your children develop self-awareness by modeling honest self-reflection. Jung discovered that children who learn to acknowledge their shadow early develop stronger psychological health. In leadership, you can create environments where people feel safe to be authentic. According to Carl Jung, authentic leadership requires acknowledging your own shadow material first. Here's the most important thing Jung discovered. Carl Jung discovered something crucial about using psychological insights. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Jung found that people who become skilled at reading others often use this ability to avoid examining themselves. They become psychological observers, analyzing everyone else while remaining blind to their own patterns. According to Carl Jung, this is the greatest danger of psychological knowledge. It can become another defense mechanism, another way to avoid genuine self-confrontation. Jung stated, "Your task is not to seek love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it." The same applies to self-knowledge. Your task isn't to analyze others, but to find the barriers you've built against knowing yourself. The first mirror, what we cannot tolerate. What type of person can you absolutely not tolerate? Think about it seriously. Who makes you uncomfortable? Who triggers that immediate visceral reaction of disgust or irritation? Is it the arrogant know-it-all who controls every conversation? The passive-aggressive colleague who never speaks directly? The perpetual victim who blames everyone else for their problems? The ruthlessly ambitious person who uses others to advance? Whatever type you chose, Jung would tell you something that might disturb you. You've just revealed something fundamental about your own shadow, those aspects of your personality that you've rejected, repressed, or refused to acknowledge. Jung's concept of the shadow isn't about being malicious or evil. It's about completeness. Every human contains the full spectrum of human potential, capacity for both kindness and cruelty, wisdom and foolishness, strength and weakness, selflessness and selfishness. But as we develop our conscious identity, we inevitably reject certain traits, pushing them into the unconscious realm Jung termed the shadow. The people who irritate us most aren't random. They're carrying traits that exist within us, but that we've disowned. The arrogant person you can't stand, look deeper. Do you have your own relationship with pride and superiority that you haven't acknowledged? The passive-aggressive person who drives you crazy, consider whether you have your own ways of avoiding direct confrontation while still trying to control outcomes. This isn't about blame or judgment. It's about recognition. Jung discovered that our strongest reactions to others are rarely about them. They're about us. When we judge someone harshly, we're often seeing a disowned part of ourselves reflected back at us. The second mirror our relationship with fallibility. Tell yourself about a time when you were absolutely certain you were correct but turned out to be wrong. This second inquiry cuts even deeper than the first. It asks us to examine not just what we dislike in others, but how we handle one of the most challenging aspects of being human: fallibility. How do you respond when you discover you've been wrong? Do you deflect and rationalize? Do you attack the person or information that challenged your certainty? Do you retreat into shame and self-criticism? Do you double down and insist you're still correct despite evidence to the contrary? Or do you pause, reflect, and genuinely consider what this moment of being wrong might teach you? Jung understood that our relationship with being incorrect reveals everything about our psychological maturity. The person who cannot tolerate being wrong is trapped in a prison of their own making, forever defending a false self that must maintain the illusion of perfection. The person who collapses into shame when wrong is equally trapped, unable to separate their worth from their accuracy. But the person who can sit with being wrong, who can examine their error with curiosity rather than defensiveness, has accessed something profound. When you can honestly examine a time you were wrong, you begin to understand the psychological mechanisms that create certainty in the first place. You see how your ego constructs narratives to protect itself, how your mind selects evidence that confirms what you want to believe, how your emotional investments in being correct can blind you to obvious truths. Jung's insight wasn't just academic. He discovered that only when we've honestly confronted our own shadow material can we help others confront theirs. Only when we've faced our own relationship with being wrong can we understand what others reveal when they answer these inquiries. The person who has done this inner work develops what Jung termed psychological mindedness, the ability to see beneath surface behaviors to the underlying psychological dynamics. They can recognize when someone's anger is really fear, when someone's arrogance is really insecurity, when someone's rigidity is really terror of chaos. But more importantly, they develop compassion. When you've seen your own capacity for self-deception, for rationalization, for defending the indefensible, you stop being surprised or judgmental when others do the same. Jung's ultimate insight wasn't about becoming expert at reading people. It was about becoming expert at reading yourself. Because when you truly understand your own psychological landscape, when you've mapped your own shadow and made peace with your own fallibility, something remarkable happens. Other people stop being mysterious. You begin to see that the colleague who frustrates you is struggling with the same internal conflicts you are, just expressing them differently. The family member who drives you crazy is defending against the same fundamental fears you harbor. The stranger whose behavior seems incomprehensible is using different strategies to meet the same basic human needs you have. This recognition doesn't excuse harmful behavior or eliminate the need for boundaries, but it transforms your relationship with other people from one of judgment and frustration to one of understanding and ultimately compassion. As Jung himself stated, everything that irritates us about others can guide us to self-understanding. The question isn't whether these insights will change how you see people. They will. The question is whether you're courageous enough to let them change how you see yourself. Because as Jung discovered through decades of working with the human psyche, that's where the real transformation begins, in the uncomfortable, necessary, liberating work of knowing yourself completely, shadow and all. Thank you so much for joining me through this exploration. If you found value in today's discussion, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who might benefit from it. And if you'd like to go a step further in supporting this work, you can now leave a super thanks below. It's a small way to express gratitude, and it truly helps keep this channel going.